All right, hello everyone. I want to talk about the commonalities between addiction and anxiety again. Since I've only done a couple videos on this on the channel, but as you know, you do coaching for more and more time, and being an OCD sufferer myself, and knowing the addictions I went through, whether it was caffeine or nicotine or pornography, and slipped into subtle compulsive behaviors with alcohol and other things, but I never struggled with serious narcotic usages. And we work with so many people. I wanted to make a video on this because a lot of people come in. I would say I get about at least 5 to 10 people a month that come in with some sort of narcotics usage past, or they're using narcotics now heavily on a daily basis, and that does include marijuana. I don't care if marijuana is legal where you live. I live in Colorado. There's marijuana stores in every corner. If you're smoking weed all day, it's more than likely not the best thing for you. I know many people don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. It doesn't matter if Joe Rogan smokes weed every day. You're not Joe Rogan. So, or an athlete or something like that. That's a rarity compared to most people. And I'm going to talk about why it's so easy to fall into that cycle, and how real it can make, how much more real it can make the suffering feel when you're not in or using one of your drugs that you use. So, and then we'll go from there. So before I go any further, please subscribe, hit that like button down below. Remember, you can email phil@ocdrecovery.com. And then we have the direct WhatsApp link down below, so you could just message him right away and get in there as soon as possible. And like I said, we get people in as quickly as we can, etc. I love when I'm like walking through intersections and people are driving by and they're probably like, this kid is talking to himself on a selfie stick, AKA the man. So most people know my story when it comes, and I'm very fortunate that I didn't fall into any serious addiction patterns around narcotics and alcohol. I have severe alcoholism and drug usage on my mom's side of the family. Now my mom, I've never seen my mom drink, and I never saw my dad drink. My dad drank a Mike's Hard Lemonade once by accident at my cousin's graduation party like 10 years ago. And he drank like 3 of them and got drunk, and it was the funniest shit I've ever seen. And he was like, whoa. And I'm like, dude, that has alcohol in it. And he's like, whoa. It was hilarious. Never seen my mom take a sip of alcohol in my entire life. My mom said she smoked weed like a couple of years ago with a friend, like once, like, which I was like, what? At like 63 years old. So I'm fortunate. I never had any of that in my life. Now, I had a serious compulsive problem with adult websites and pornography, as many people do. Many young men find it really young. And I've used nicotine a lot in my life as well. I was a big cigarette smoker for many years. And now I'm in a place where I can have a cigar or 2 a week, and, I can go to a couple music festivals a year and smoke some cigarettes and then cut it for the rest of the year. And that doesn't bother me. There's no latching mechanism on that. So what happens is, when you start suffering with something, whether it's anxiety, OCD, doesn't really matter what we call it, but let's say some sort of an emotional disturbance. Oh, hey there, squirrel. ADHD. And what happens is you start to realize that certain types of behaviors or substances really numb out and drown out your thoughts, images, sensations, and urges. They also can do it with physical pain. There's a lot of people who have serious pain conditions like complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS, fibromyalgia, and other things like that, chronic fatigue, and they start using and abusing drugs on a daily basis because it numbs it out and it works so well. This is a common thing that we see. And it's a sad thing because it's so easily available. And again, I'm not here to talk about medications, and always speak to your doctors, but benzodiazepines are a very slippery slope. There's many stories on people. The best story is Jordan Peterson, who was prescribed benzodiazepines because his wife Tammy had a terminal cancer that she recovered from, which is amazing. And I'm not sure his entire story. I've only heard it from his mouth in certain podcasts, and I've read both his books, his 2 new ones, the 12 Rules of Life, where he talked about this. And he was on Joe Rogan about 4 or 5 months ago, and he said that it took him, I think it said 2 years to feel some sense of normality since his very last dosages of benzodiazepines. And that's someone that had no previous drug usage problem whatsoever, and is clinically very sound in many ways. He's probably a little bit more sound in the past compared to now. So, but anyway, and that goes to show you what it can do. And so we have to be careful with Xanax and Klonopins and those serious benzos because they're highly, highly, highly addicting. And you should always talk to your provider about that. If the individual prescribing you benzodiazepines is not bringing up the seriousness and the addictive qualities of that drugs, go for a second opinion. Please do yourself a favor. And some people watching this are on benzodiazepines. I've talked to people who've been on benzos for a long time. They're trying to withdraw under their doctor's supervision. And it's very difficult, but it can be the best thing for you. Anyway, because this is not a benzodiazepine specific video. It is important to state that marijuana, and I know many people don't want to hear this. I hear, marijuana is good for you. Well, let's just be quite frank. And this is coming from someone that likes smoking, like again, with the cigars and the nicotine and everything like that. You are putting a foreign substance into your lungs over and over and over again every single day. I don't care if you have hemp seed paper or any of the other stuff that people use as an excuse. And you can do whatever you want, but it's important to be real about what you're doing. If you're smoking 6, 10, 12 bong hits a day, if you're smoking 3, 4, 5 blunts a day or multiple joints a day, every day, all day, it's probably not the best thing for you. That doesn't mean you can't accept yourself in your life. I'm saying that it probably... You'll want to bring that consumption down or potentially even let it go for a little bit. I said to people on the phone, if I told you right now that you had to stop smoking marijuana for 6 months to give yourself the best opportunity to learn to balance it in the future and change your belief systems, would you do it? Many people say they would, but they unfortunately don't. And I was a big proponent of this with pornography because it was such an easy thing to fall back onto. There's a great TED Talk on a guy, I can't remember his name, from New York City, talking about his pornography addiction. I've watched it many times when I was trying to get sober from that myself. And he talked about how easy it is to go back to the comfort of pornography. And this is completely accurate. And anyone that's really abused this stuff on a daily basis like I was can really understand how easy it is to go back to those websites when you're just having a bad day. I'm not feeling so well, and I'll go back to the website, and et cetera. So it's important to be realistic about how much you're giving into these behaviors, whether it's marijuana every single day, whether it's, I work with people currently who are ex-heroin users or ex-crystal meth users, cocaine addiction. I've worked with many people with cocaine addictions because they're substituting a dopamine rush in a manic state to get rid of or run from their thoughts, images, sensation, urges, especially, if they're coming off of having severe OCD for years and years and years, and hopelessness is very much alive. So that's a big thing that many people do. And addiction, by the way, we don't say that we work with addiction. We just work with a lot of people who have addictive problems, which again is common in the OCD world. If you're working with someone else from the addictive standpoint, that's amazing. But we will be addressing the belief systems behind it, which is the fear of fear. So a lot of addictive cycles, once they come to an end, let's say they're 2, 3, 4, 5 months sober, depending on who you're with, if you're with AA or NA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous, or maybe another faith organization, a lot of stuff can be based around the fear of fear, and that's the fear of relapsing and going backwards. So that's a big one for sure. We know that. That was one that definitely affected me a lot with my... I heard like a bunch of weird sounds. That's the one that really affected me for a while. The fear of going backwards, the fear of slipping up, the fear of going back to square one. These are all the common belief systems that people see when they're coming off of a hard drug. And because whoever you're talking to, it depends on what organization you're talking to, they're usually basing it off how important it is to never go back to that life ever again, which is really, really important. But there's many people that do go back to those lives. And it's sad, but it's the reality of it. Oh, it's a roofing I'm hearing. I'm like, well, they're all, it's like gunshots? No, it's the roofers hitting the do. It's like, damn, someone's popping off a semi-automatic over here. But no, only in America. So I think I have a little joke right there. We're going to laugh at things, how serious life can be. And but that's the main thing, the fear of going backwards, the fear of being homeless and all that. So those fears will have to be addressed. And, you know, if what you want to be careful of, and because we have OCD, we have to approach it in a slightly different way than maybe someone who was addicted to hard drugs or alcohol who didn't have OCD. But for us, if we say stuff such as, I will never go back, I can never go back, those strong black and white statements, that's really going to fuse that in the mind and make it very, very difficult to get better from. I know for myself, when I said to myself, I could never use pornography again, I could never go backwards to using that stuff, I could never smoke ever again, because I like smoking, I enjoy it, I balance it. I like nicotine, I like hookah, and I like cigars, and I'll probably smoke on and off for the remainder of my life. And if it causes me lung cancer or mouth cancer, then so be it, etc. But I, hopefully with how little I use it, on a couple cigars a month or something, and then some cigarettes once or twice a year, hopefully that's not enough, but we'll see what happens. But I can balance that. Some people can't. The pornography things, and it's important to know what you can and cannot balance. And this is a really hard thing to talk about too. We're not saying that any amount of drug usage is good, but we're saying that there are people, like I will say this, and we don't say this, I'll say this. There are people that can, let's say, go out to a party once or twice a year, or go to Vegas and use illicit drugs, maybe drugs that would be classified as illegal drugs, and they can do that and have a crazy weekend and take the risk, and then they're okay, and they don't think about using it for the rest of the year. There are people like that. The world right now is extremely black and white. It's like you're either sober or you're an addict. That's not true. There's a massive gray area in between. And whether I'll use cocaine for an example. There are plenty of people out there that use cocaine maybe a couple times a year. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's a class 1 drug. I think it's a class 1 drug with a felony charge. But there are people that do that. And they take that risk. And many people take many risks on a daily basis. People, if you correlated it, more people probably die from texting and driving on a daily basis than being a super, super uncommon cocaine user once or twice a year when they go to Vegas with their buddies. It's just the reality of it. That's a hard thing to talk about because people have very strong, anything where someone has a strong emotional opinion based around something and an experience, it's really easy for that person to use that experience and kind of correlate that to everyone else. So I have many people that ask me all the time, are you anti-pornography? That's a big one I get asked all the time. And I say, no, I'm not. And they said, how could you not be out of your story? And I say, well, there's people out there that can use it a couple times a month or maybe even once a week, and they can still hold strong relationships. It's just not as simple as itself as it being a bad thing. But anyone who struggles with pornography will tell you that that no one can use it in a balanced manner, which is simply not true at all. Usually the individuals that are talking about pornography being inherently bad, it's usually the religious crowd, not always, but usually. I see that a lot because it's based around monogamy. So it's important to dive through and look at all the different working mechanisms of every single addiction pattern and like that. It's just like saying, is heroin inherently bad for you? It's certainly not inherently bad for you. There's great benefits in opioids. Same thing with fentanyl, using in medications. Same thing with ketamine for certain treatments. Same thing with psilocybin, the psychoactive component in acid. And I think shrooms. I don't know if it's the same. I might have got that mixed up, but you know what I mean here. I'm not a psilocybin expert, etc. So it's just, again, as a society, we have to realize what someone can balance and what someone can't. In Cicero, great book on old age by Cicero, which I read about 2 months ago, Roman statesman. He wrote a book when he was in his 80s, and he said that sometimes it's easier to have abstinence than to balance moderation, and that's going to look completely different from person to person. So if you are struggling with, if you're smoking weed all day long, all the time, you're probably going to want to go a while without it, especially when you're going through the recovery process. If you're using serious hard drugs, crystal meth, crack, heroin, cocaine, daily basis, that more than likely needs to come to a complete dead stop, and it's going to be very tough. And then work with someone, obviously, who handles the addiction side. But again, these are open conversations that people, and I enjoy asking people these questions that I'm friends with. We have these conversations. Maybe I have a couple friends, again, the Vegas example, they go to Vegas once a year, they do a bunch of drugs, and then they don't do drugs for a whole entire year. I know many people that do this. No smoking cigarettes when they're in Vegas. They look a degenerate. They smoke 3 packs of Marlboro Lights. They're gambling like a scumbag and all sorts of stuff. And then they cut it. And if you ask someone, they'll be like, that is the worst thing for you. That's a gateway. It's not that simple. It's not a gateway. And gateway is a weird term, right? Because people say marijuana is a gateway drug, but that's not necessarily true either, because I used a lot of marijuana. It didn't gateway me to anything. But everyone's genetics are different. Everyone's belief systems are different. And there are certain people out there that will really have a higher propensity to going into those things full blown. So you do have to be careful about that. And that is something you want to watch out for, because addiction is just, it's really sad, but it's not as straightforward as most people believe. Now, I've been around addiction my whole life. Everyone knows stories I talk about. I know many people who have died from heroin, fentanyl overdoses in the last 10 years. Many people, dozens, and other people who have ended their lives because of other addictions to ADHD medications from that, and it's really sad stuff. Yeah, anyway, so addiction is a very serious thing, but it's not just a spectrum of you're sober versus this, because right now on social media, there's a lot of these gurus out there that talk about why no drinking, no sugar, and all that is the best thing for your life. And I don't think it's the best thing for your life. I think it's actually, I think drinking alcohol and going out, if you're like most people, because remember, social media will convince you that everyone is either an alcoholic or they're not. This is not true. 95% of all people that consume alcohol, more than likely, okay, let's go to 80%, so someone's not holding me to some standard, because people get really bent up about the statistics. We'll just say most people, a high-end proportion, can use alcohol in a balanced manner, and then maybe every once in a while they slip into a non-balanced manner, but they have no alcoholic tendencies. And then people will convince them that they have to get rid of that because it's bad for their lives. I don't agree with that. I think there's great benefits in that. You have good times with friends. You can go out. You can make new friends. You have great experiences. You have one-night stands, etc. It's just not as that. But there can be downsides to that too. You can get into drinking and driving, get a DUI like I did. So it's just not as straightforward. Jesus, squirrel. It's like running right next to my head, scaring me over here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The way what I do now is I drink probably about 4 to 8 drinks a month. Have a cigar once a week. Sometimes I go a couple weeks without. Sometimes I have 2 in 1 week. When I go to Ultra every year, I chain smoke cigarettes, which is amazing because I do like doing that. And I'm pretty good, I would say. I hike big 14,000 foot mountains and I work out all the time, and I would say I'm pretty healthy overall. So it's not that simple, but most people can't do that. I don't use pornography anymore, because for me, that every time I've tried the balance, it always went down the same way. I would use pornography, I would end up cheating, I would end up verbally cheating through sexting or whatever, and then I would physically cheat. And it's how it was for basically my entire life. And I know many people like that. But again, I know people that you know, I've had good conversations with Momin, where Momin's like, yeah, I can go like 3 weeks without using porn, and I don't think about it. That I can use it like once or twice in 1 week. So yeah, it's just not what people think, because you hear the pornography just has really strong statements. And also there's a bias, there's extreme bias when you've been addicted to something. So to be able to step back from your own addiction and be like, you know, it's hard to justify, again, like the hard ones like cocaine and crystal meth and heroin, but you know, those ones are really, really, really tough to be like, can you use them in a balanced manner? I mean, fuck, probably not. Like, you know what I mean? But like I said, it's a case-by-case scenario, and we try to be open-minded about it, and that's not a pro usage of hard drugs. That's not me. I'm just trying to get you thinking about not being so black and white, because you can, if you're very black and white on a couple subjects, that black and white subject will kind of roll over into other things. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. I think this is a very important topic. That's why I like covering it, and I have a lot of personal experience with it. And then, you know, like I said, hopefully see you guys in some one-to-one calls. Look for that What's Up link down below, and then the webinar's coming up, 8:30 p.m. UK times, and I'll let you know about the conference when it comes closer. Have a good one, everyone.